I think that what Justice Alito has to say is both counter-historical and also antithetical to certain provisions in the Constitution. But let's start with the history. For the last 234 years, as my friend and scholar Steve Vladeck has pointed out, so much of what we understand as the modern Supreme Court has been a creation of Congress. If it hadn't been for Congress, this Supreme Court would have one justice, it would have no staff, it would have no building, it would have no library, and most importantly, it would have no appropriations to provide any of those things. So the idea that Congress has no role to play here just is not a function of American history, which is ironically something that Alito thinks he's the protector of.
Well, that's interesting, Matt. I mean, Lisa makes all the right points here because, to some of us sort of, outside the court space, it sounds like the Justice Alito is essentially thinking he, if not the Supreme Court, is above the law. What do you make of the politics here and how that plays out in how this court is perceived when it's basically telling Congress to pound sand?
Well, this has been my worry for the last 7 years, is that when you start removing and starting allow people to overcome any guardrails or any systems or any institutions, the result of it is what Donald Trump does, which is ignore the law, ignore the Constitution, do what he wants, and basically be an autocrat. And the lesson that Justice Alito seems to have learned from that is nobody's going to hold me accountable and nobody's going to hold us accountable. Therefore, we are just an extension of a supreme presidency, basically, in the course of this. I, for one, have made the argument for many, many years, and I think you have as well, is the power of the presidency and the power of the Supreme Court has gone way past, in my view, way past where the system of checks and balances that were established. Even though the House is a zoo and the Senate has a hard time getting anything done, I actually firmly believe the House and the Senate have to assert their control, not only over the presidency, more control, but over the Supreme Court. The idea that basically they can decide their own ethics and then they basically can give the middle finger to Congress is a natural extension from Donald Trump, from nobody, or not nobody, Republicans of his own party, not holding him accountable for knocking over guardrails.
Lisa, I want to pull the lens back a little bit on this discussion because, to Matt's point, we're here because of the behavior of Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, having faced recent ethics scandals for receiving gifts from powerful conservatives. Based on talks, I've had Chief Justice Roberts is really feeling backed in the corner by these statements, particularly public statements like Alito. What do you think this means, and how should the court really, Justice Roberts, respond to this to sort of right, to Matt's point, the balance between the justices, the court, and the legislative and executive branches?
Justice Roberts is in an unenviable position here, Michael. He wants the public to believe in the court's legitimacy. In fact, he went out of his way in the student loan dispute that was one of the last opinions this term to say nobody should believe that we are at each other's throats, in essence. We're just reasonable people having a reasonable disagreement about what the law provides. But he knows that he has to try and keep the court together. And so he is trying not to embarrass or undermine under justices. The problem is, without guardrails, this court's legitimacy is threatened all across the political spectrum. You noted the examples of Justices Alito and Thomas, but there have been other examples, less flagrant examples, I will note, involving Justice Sotomayor and retired Justice Stephen Breyer, where they have done some things that have also raised some concerns about the ethics of accepting air travel, for example, or using court staff to try and persuade college libraries to buy Justice Sotomayor's book. Without a very clear ethical code of conduct to guide this court, all justices on this court, not just the justices on the conservative side, will have their judgment questioned and their ethics questioned as well, Michael.